They say every city keeps a secret timetable. Trains that aren't printed. Platforms that don't exist. And if you listen under the noise, you can hear the one that's meant for you. That was the hook the city's transit director gave me when he called. Unofficially, he said, because people love that word when they want you to walk into the dark for them. 3 riders had vanished in 2 months. Different neighborhoods, different nights, same last sighting, boarding the late train on the Green Line and never stepping off at the next station. People don't just evaporate, I told Claire as we cut through the midnight wind toward the service entrance beneath Dwyer Street. They get picked up. Or dropped off. She pulled her scarf tighter and smirked. So which is this? We're about to find out. The service door opened for us with a groan that belonged in a horror movie. Inside, the smell of hot dust and old electricity wrapped around us. A transit supervisor named Mendez met us with a ring of keys big enough to anchor a ship and an expression that said he'd rather be anywhere else. You'll want to see this first, he said, guiding us into a tiny control room where a wall of monitors flickered grayscale ghosts. He cued a clip. The time stamp read 2:17 a.m., 3 nights ago. An empty Green Line train drifted into frame, lights low, slowing as if for a stop. There's no station here, Claire said, frowning. There isn't, Mendez answered, softer than he'd started. On the footage, the train halted in a black stretch of tunnel. Doors slid open on both cars. A man stepped down from the first car like he'd been expected. Beyond him, nothing. Just darkness. Freeze it, I said. Mendez tapped keys. We leaned in. Along the tunnel wall, just at the edge of the train's headlight, someone had painted a symbol the cameras kept struggling to hold, a small black circle with 2 short vertical bars through it, like twin rails crossing a moon. It shimmered, not with motion, but with that stubborn quality older things have when they refuse to be recorded cleanly. Ever seen that? Claire asked. Mendez shook his head too fast to be a lie. We shouldn't even be stopped there. There's nothing there. Then show us nothing, I said. He hesitated only a second before handing over a high-visibility vest and a pocket radio. You keep this channel open. I'll throw the breaker to maintenance power. No live rail near that spur, but don't test your luck. The corridor beyond the control room was a concrete throat that swallowed footsteps and gave them back colder. We dropped past steel stairs slick with the city's breath, past pipes sweating rust, past a faded warning, authorized personnel only. I've been authorized by less. Claire kept pace, the beam from her flashlight sewing a white seam across riveted plates. If there's a ghost station, it's the first I've seen with an HR department. Ghosts don't file for benefits, I said. People do. And people built this. At the bottom landing, the world widened. The main tunnel curved away to our right, rails gleaming in our beams like coiled snakes. To the left, a cross passage yawned where the wall should have been. No signage. Just the same black circle with the twin bars, painted low by the floor, fresh enough to shine. Claire crouched, lifted a finger near the mark but didn't touch. No dust on it. Recent. I turned my light into the cross passage. It ran flat, a maintenance catwalk hugging the inner wall, the air colder by a few degrees, the way it gets when space opens up ahead. My heels remembered 1,000 other corridors, 1,000 other bad ideas. We went anyway. There's a very particular quiet in a tunnel with the main line humming somewhere else. You hear the city breathing through its vents. You hear the tiny clicks of cooling metal. You hear yourself thinking in a voice you don't always like. Halfway down, a faint chime drifted toward us, the polite two-tone ding of an arriving train. No rails under our feet, no schedule on any board, but the sound carried like a practiced smile. Tell me you heard that, Claire whispered. I did, I said, because there's no point lying to the person who's about to run with you. The passage opened onto a platform. Not rubble, not a half-built idea, a platform. Old, but intact. White tile trimmed in jade, the glaze cracked like dried riverbeds. Vintage enamel signs bolted high, so stained from years of leaks they'd turned sepia. A mosaic name ran along the wall in serif caps, most of it knocked out. Only 3 letters survived at the end, N6. Claire's breath fogged. This isn't on any map. That's why it's here, I said. Someone had cleaned this place. Not enough to make it welcoming, just enough to say it wasn't abandoned by accident. I found a pile of newspapers bound with string, dates spread across a decade, all from June. On the pillar nearest the center line, the black circle symbol appeared again, this time bracketed by tiny hand-scratched hash marks, 20, maybe more, like someone counting days on a cell wall. Then the lights changed. Not bright. Not many. Somewhere out in the tunnel, a relay hiccuped and the dimmest run of bulbs stirred, casting a tired, honey-colored glow along the curve. Far down, headlights broke into view, growing from pinpricks to coins to an approaching promise. The chimes sounded once, sweet and false. The rails that were supposed to end here, rails I couldn't see at my feet, thrummed under the soles of my boots. Claire's hand found my sleeve. Harry. I see it. The train slid in slow, the shape of it wrong in a way that only becomes obvious when you've seen too many right ones. Shorter cars. Matte paint. Old, brushed steel doors with narrow vertical windows, the kind you cup your hands to see through. It stopped with the precision of a practiced ghost. No one was inside. Or maybe the light kept you from telling. My eyes found movement, not a person, not a hand, just a single hanging strap swaying, the rest dead still. The doors parted with a sigh. Warm air breathed out from the car, stale and sweet, tinged with something floral like a cheap lobby. Hidden speakers clicked, and a woman's voice, not quite ours, not quite anywhere, floated out in the sing-song cadence cities use to tell you what you already know. Last stop. Passengers for continuation, remain on board. Claire took a small step forward before she realized she had. I stopped her with a touch. The platform felt like a scale, and every ounce we put on it was a test. Notice anything? I asked, low. She swallowed. No ads. She was right. No posters, no maps, no public service smiles urging you to recycle or report suspicious packages. Just bare enamel. Old tile. And, above the open doorway of the middle car, that black circle with 2 bars again, this time etched into the metal itself. The radio on my vest crackled with Mendez's voice, warped by distance. You seeing anything? I clicked transmit once, then let go. Words felt like the wrong currency. On the far wall, at the end of a row of tiles that had outlived their purpose, something silvered caught my beam. A plaque, half pried off, bent like a page turned too hard. I brushed dust aside with my glove. Engraved letters surfaced. Commissioned City Transit Authority. Inaugural service. And then a year that had been scratched out so thoroughly the steel underneath showed its throat. The train's chime sounded again. A second voice layered under the first, a whisper caught on its last consonant. Not a word I knew. Not a word I wanted to. Claire exhaled through her nose, steadying herself. If this is a trap, it's a very polite one. Most are, I said. I peered through the open door. A neat row of seats. A floor clean enough to shame half the stations above. No dust. No litter. No time. And on the seat nearest the door, facing us, lay a single item that didn't belong in any museum, a student transit pass, the kind the city prints by the thousand for kids on reduced fares. The photo on it was recent. The name read Maya Li. Claire stiffened. She's one of the missing. The pass trembled once with the mild vibration of the car, then settled as the chime purred a third time. The doors began to inch back toward each other. If you've ever watched the ocean pull a toy from a child's hand, You know that moment, the choice between what you can see and what you'll never get back. I looked at Claire. She didn't nod. She didn't have to. We moved. The doors closed on us with the softness of an elevator in an expensive building, no slam, no warning. Just the quiet hiss of two worlds sealing apart. The car lurched once and began to glide forward, slow at first, then with the measured speed of something that knew exactly where it was going. Claire kept her eyes on the platform as it slid away into shadow, the jade trim vanishing, the last tile letters swallowed by the dark. The only light now came from the car itself, long, frosted tubes overhead that hummed with a low, constant note. We didn't speak for the first minute. There's a point in an investigation where every word feels too heavy to carry, where you know the wrong one might make something notice you. Claire broke the silence. You feel that? I did. The car wasn't rattling like it should. Rails have personality, they squeal, they groan, they remind you they exist. This felt smooth. Too smooth. As if the train was moving on something other than steel. The walls beyond the windows weren't walls at all. They were black, absolute and depthless, swallowing the glow from the car without reflection. I leaned close to the glass, cupping my hands to block the interior glare. For a second, maybe less, I thought I saw another set of lights out there, running parallel. Then they were gone. Claire picked up the transit pass from the seat, turning it over in her hands. No expiry date. That's not standard. The card was warm. Not from her touch, it had been sitting in the open air. Like it had been carried in someone's pocket moments before we arrived. I checked the other seats. No dust, no trash, no signs of wear. Only one small mark, a faint, almost oily smear on the window beside the passe's seat. 5 smudges. Fingertips. A faint bell chimed. Not the pleasant station arrival tone, sharper, like a warning in a language you don't speak but understand anyway. The car slowed. We both turned to the door. The panel above it lit with 3 characters that didn't belong to any route I'd ever ridden, circled reverse solidus, the circle and bars symbol, glowing a dull amber. The train stopped. The doors opened. If the platform we boarded from was old, this one was ancient. The air was thick with minerals and something older, the scent of stone that hasn't seen daylight in centuries. The walls here weren't tiled. They were bare rock, smoothed only where the train needed to clear. Small alcoves were cut into them at intervals, each holding what looked like a bench but was, on closer inspection, just a slab. No ads. No signage. No clocks. Just the hum of the train behind us. Claire stepped off first. Her boots made a sound like stepping into a cave. Harry, look at this. She aimed her beam into one alcove. The back wall was etched with shallow lines, hundreds of them, overlapping like tally marks made by different hands over years. Some were deep and straight. Others barely scratched the surface. And among them, over and over, the same symbol, circle with bars. How many? She asked. Too many, I said. A sound came from deeper in the tunnel. Not a train. Not footsteps. Something in between, the measured scrape of wood on stone, slow, steady. Like something being dragged. It was joined by a faint metallic jingle, irregular, like keys in a loose pocket. Claire glanced at me. We staying for that? The scraping grew louder, then stopped. Silence fell in thick layers. From the darkness beyond the alcoves, a figure appeared. It was a man, or something wearing the shape of one, tall, rail-thin, dressed in what might once have been a transit uniform, the kind the city retired decades ago. The cap was pulled low, shadowing his face, but I could see the line of his jaw, sharp enough to cut glass. His hands were empty. Whatever had been making the dragging noise wasn't with him now. He stopped about 10 feet from us. You shouldn't be here, he said. His voice was dry, papery. Not angry, just certain, like someone telling you the weather. We got on your train, I said. He tilted his head slightly. Not my train. The train. Claire took a half step closer. Where's Miley? He didn't answer right away. His gaze moved between us, weighing something. Then, if you want her, you'll have to get off before the next stop. What's the next stop? I asked. He looked past me toward the car. Where the line ends. The bell chimed again, sharper this time. The doors began to close. Claire moved first, stepping back inside. I followed, my eyes on the man until the last possible second. He didn't move. Didn't call out. Just watched, as the alcoves and their tally-marked walls slid away. The car picked up speed. Claire gripped the rail by the door. Harry, did you see his shoes? I had. They weren't scuffed. They weren't new. They were the kind issued to transit workers in this city until 1974. The year had been scratched off the plaque in the first station. We passed another stretch of absolute black, the lights inside the car flickering just enough to change the shadows. For a heartbeat, there was someone sitting 3 rows down from us. The flicker passed. The seat was empty. The bell chimed a third time. The panel above the door lit again, same symbol, but this time in red. Claire swallowed. I think we're about to find out where the line ends. The train slowed. And somewhere far ahead, through the dark, I thought I heard water. The train drifted to a stop like it was afraid to wake something. No screech, no hiss, just the steady deceleration of a predator settling into its crouch. The doors opened. Cold air spilled in, thick and damp. The smell was wrong, not the metallic tang of tunnels, but brine and rot, the kind of scent you get standing on an abandoned pier at low tide. Beyond the doors, a platform barely wide enough for 2 people to stand side by side. And past that, nothing but black water, stretching into the dark. We stepped off. The concrete under my boots was slick with moss, the edges crumbling. Faint light glimmered far out on the water, swaying, a lantern, maybe, or something pretending to be one. Claire swept her flashlight along the platform. There were no benches, no signs, just a row of thick wooden posts spaced evenly along the edge. Each had a loop of rope tied tight, ends hanging into the water. They dock here, she murmured. The sound of the train doors sliding shut behind us made her flinch. I turned. The car was still there, but the interior was dark now, windows black as if the light had been switched off or taken away. A low hum began, deep in the concrete, as the train rolled backward, not toward the tunnels we'd come from, but into the water. The rails dipped under, vanishing into the black, and the last of the roof slid beneath the surface without a ripple. Claire stared. That's not possible. Tell that to physics, I said, but my voice didn't sound convinced. Somewhere in the dark water, wood knocked against wood. Then the faint scrape of an oar. The lantern light grew closer, resolving into a small boat, old, the paint peeling, the bow low from weight. A man rowed it, back bent, face hidden by a hood. In the stern sat 3 figures, still as statues. The boat bumped gently against the nearest post. The hooded man tied it off and turned his head toward us. Passengers? His voice was low, but it carried, too far, like the water wanted us to hear him. We're looking for a girl, I said. Miley. No reaction. Just the sound of water slapping against the hull. Claire stepped forward. She's alive. We have her ID. Where is she? The man lifted a hand, thin, wet, veins like wires, and pointed past us, toward the far end of the platform. We followed the line of posts to where the platform ended in a squat concrete structure. No doors, no windows, just a single archway leading into blackness. Above the arch, carved deep into the stone, was the same circle and bars symbol. The smell coming from inside was stronger, seawater, and something else, sour and metallic. I stepped in first. Claire stayed close enough that her beam crossed mine. The floor was uneven, water pooling in low spots. The walls curved inward, the surface rough and pitted. Along them, set into niches, were wooden crates stacked 2 and 3 high. Each had a name painted on the side in faded white letters. Claire knelt by the nearest crate, brushing away mildew. "These are dates," she said, voice tight. "Some of these are over 50 years old." I pulled the lid from one that wasn't nailed shut. Inside, wrapped in thick oilcloth, was a stack of envelopes, dozens, maybe hundreds. I took one, peeled back the cloth, and slid the letter free. It was short. Typed. No salutation. Just 3 lines. Selected. Do not return. And a symbol, stamped in red wax, the circle and bars. Something shifted behind the crates. Not a rat. Bigger. Slow. I stepped back, drawing Claire with me as a figure unfolded from the shadows. It was the man from the previous station, the one in the outdated uniform. His cap was gone now, revealing hair gone to wisps and skin so pale it looked powdered. "You're still here," I said. He ignored me, his gaze on the crates. "It's not for you to open those." "Where's Maya?" Claire asked. He looked at her for a long time. "Then, you have one chance. When the boat leaves, you take it. Or you stay, and you join the tally." From outside, the lantern light shifted. The oar scraped again. The boatman was turning the hull. Claire moved to the archway. "Harry, he's leaving." I took one last look at the crates, the names, the dates, the neat stacks of letters. Somewhere in here was Maya's. Somewhere in here were dozens more. But the uniformed man hadn't moved. His eyes followed me all the way to the boat. We climbed in. The hull rocked under our weight. The boatman pushed off without a word. As we drifted away, I looked back. The platform was already fading into the dark. But the man was still there, standing perfectly still at the water's edge. And just before the black swallowed him, he raised his hand and tapped twice against his temple. A small, deliberate gesture. A reminder. That he knew me now. The oars cut through the water with slow, deliberate strokes. The boatman didn't speak, and neither did we. The lantern's light swayed over the black surface, sometimes catching the glint of something beneath, a rail, a cable, or just tricks of depth in water too still to trust. After a while, the air changed. Warmer. Fainter smell of salt. Then concrete overhead broke into open night. We drifted into what looked like a dry dock tucked beneath the edge of the riverfront. Rotting pilings ringed it, and rusted chains hung from crossbeams like something waiting to be hoisted. The boatman tied off without looking at us. "Up there," he said, nodding toward a staircase carved into the retaining wall. Claire glanced at me. "That's it. We just walk away." I didn't answer until we were on the steps. No one just walks away from something like this. At street level, the city looked almost normal. Neon signs bled into puddles. Distant traffic sighed. Somewhere a late bar crowd laughed too loud. But the air had a residue to it, a faint echo of the underground damp, like the tunnels were breathing through the cracks. Claire pulled her coat tight. "I keep thinking about the crates. How many names were there?" "Too many to clear in one night," I said. "We'll start with Maya." We headed for the nearest station entrance, planning to work backwards through the system. But halfway there, I stopped. On the tiled wall by the stairwell, big, bold, fresh, was the circle and bars symbol. Painted in black, the drip still wet. Claire touched it lightly. "They're above ground now." "They've always been above ground," I said. "We just didn't see it." Inside the station, the late crowd was thin, a few commuters, a janitor mopping tile. We went to the ticket booth. The clerk looked half asleep until I showed him the transit pass with Maya Lee's face. "You've seen her?" I asked. His eyes narrowed slightly. "That's old." "It's 3 days old," Claire said. "Not for us," he said, and slid the pass back. "You need to leave that here." I didn't take my hand off it. "Why?" He looked past me, toward the dark mouth of the tunnel. "Because if it rides again, it's not yours anymore." We didn't stick around to debate transit folklore. Back on the street, Claire's phone buzzed. It was a text from Mendez, the supervisor who'd helped us down earlier. "Cameras picked something up, need you here. Now." His office was 3 blocks away, but by the time we got there, he was pacing outside with a cigarette burning down to the filter. He didn't waste time. "5 minutes ago," he said, leading us into the control room. On the main monitor, live feed from the same ghost platform we'd boarded from. Except now, there was movement. A girl. Thin, long dark hair, wearing a red jacket. She was walking alone down the platform, toward the middle car of the waiting train. "Maya," Claire said. The camera flickered. For a second, the car's windows were full of faces, pale, still, watching her. Then the image jumped, and she was gone. The train too. Mendez froze the feed. The last frame showed the black circle symbol scrawled across the wall behind where the train had been, big enough to fill the screen. "We were just there," Claire said. "We didn't see her." "That feeds on a delay," Mendez admitted. "Sometimes, hours. Sometimes days." I turned to him. "How do we get ahead of it?" "Not follow. Get in front." He looked like he wanted to say, "You don't." But then he dug out an old, dust-covered route map from a filing cabinet. It was stamped in red, obsolete. "There," he said, pointing to a stretch of tunnel that looped away from the main green line. "The 6th spur. It's been sealed for 50 years. Only connects in 2 places. One is where you got on. The other," he tapped the far end, "comes up in the old freight terminal on Dock Street." "When's the next train?" I asked. His eyes were flat. "There's no schedule. But if it wants you," he trailed off. Dock Street was the kind of place the city forgot on purpose: empty warehouses, busted street lamps, asphalt split by weeds. The freight terminal sat at the far end, a brick husk with its loading doors welded shut. Claire and I circled to the side entrance. A rusted steel door hung half open. Inside, the air was cold and metallic, smelling faintly of oil. The vast floor was empty except for one thing: a line of old steel rails running straight into the far wall. The rails vanished under a massive sliding gate, and above that gate, painted in perfect, fresh strokes, was the circle and bars. Claire's beam caught something on the floor just before the gate. A single shoe. Small. Red canvas. Worn at the toes. "She's here," Claire said. The gate shuddered. Somewhere behind it, deep and low, came the 2-tone chime. The chime echoed through the freight terminal like it had been waiting for us. Low, clear, and final. Claire glanced at me. "If we go in there, we might not get another way out." I put a hand on the gate. The steel was warm, vibrating faintly. "Then we make sure we leave through the front door." The gate slid upward on its own. Behind it, the rails dipped into a tunnel just tall enough for a single car. Light spilled toward us, not bright, just the same pale yellow glow we'd seen underground. We stepped inside. The tunnel curved almost immediately, forcing us into its throat. The sound of the city died behind us, replaced by the hum of unseen power. Around the bend, the track opened onto a platform no longer than the car it held. The train waited with its doors open. Inside, the air was still, smelling faintly of salt and iron. And there, in the middle of the car, sitting perfectly straight, was Maya Lee. She didn't look scared. She didn't look relieved. She looked expectant. "Maya," Claire said softly. "We're here to take you home." Maya's eyes moved from Claire to me, then past me, to something at the far end of the platform. He stepped forward from the shadows. The man in the outdated transit uniform. His cap was back on now, brim low. "She can't go with you," he said. "She's not yours to keep," I answered. He tilted his head slightly. "They all belong to the line, once chosen." I took a step toward him. "The line doesn't choose. People do. And I've got a list of names you've taken over the years." His expression didn't change. "You think this is cruelty. It isn't. It's preservation. You above only see the surface. Down here, we see the rot. We take one, to save the rest." Claire moved closer to Maya. "You can explain that to the police." The man almost smiled. "The police ride the line more often than you'd like to know." The chime sounded again, and the train's lights flickered. The air felt heavier, as if the tunnel itself was leaning in to listen. I kept my eyes on him. "If she stays, you get trouble you can't bury. If she leaves, maybe you keep your shadows a little longer." For the first time, his gaze wavered. Not toward me, toward Maya. "Maya," he said, and there was something almost gentle in it. "Tell them what you told me." Her voice was small, but steady. I got on the wrong train. But when I saw where it went, I didn't want to get off." Claire frowned. "Why?" Maya's eyes were glassy now. "Because down here, it's quiet. It's clean. No one watches you unless you want them to. It's not like up there." The man looked at me. "She's not the first to choose this. She won't be the last." The chime pulsed a third time, and the doors began to close. I moved before I could think, crossing the gap and wedging my shoulder into the narrowing space. "Claire, now." She pulled Maya up, ignoring the girl's half-hearted protest, and shoved her toward me. We spilled onto the platform just as the doors sealed. The man didn't move to stop us. He just watched, his face unreadable, as the train began to roll backward into the dark. We ran the length of the platform and into the tunnel, our lights bouncing off damp walls. Behind us, the chime faded, replaced by the low, steady hum of retreating rails. The tunnel opened back into the freight terminal. The gate stood wide. And for the first time since we'd entered, I could feel the city's air again, cold, real, and alive. Mendez was waiting in the street with 2 squad cars. They took Maya gently, wrapping her in a blanket. She didn't resist. She didn't look back. Claire stood beside me, watching the paramedics check her over. "You think she'll tell them what happened?" "No," I said. "She'll tell them a version they can live with." Claire glanced toward the terminal. "And him?" I looked at the shadowed doorway, the rails vanishing inside. "He's still down there. And so's the line." The squad cars pulled away, their lights flickering red and blue against the wet pavement. The street fell quiet again. I started back toward the gate. Claire caught my arm. "Harry, it's over." I shook my head. "Not until that tunnel's sealed." We stepped inside. The gate was still open. The rails still gleamed faintly in the half-light. And there, painted fresh across the wall in strokes so black they seemed to sink into the concrete, was the Circle N bar symbol. Beneath it, in neat white letters, one line. "Next departure, pending."